All right now, you are live. Here we go. Now come on into the self-love journey. You remember who's coming in. Oh, let me make sure that okay. You ahead of the game. Come on now. All right now. Now come on in. Come on in. I'm excited about tonight. I will not right to the music. That's one of my favorite singers, Mr. Tate. Y'all make sure y'all check him out. Come on, come on. I see y'all coming in. Like and share. Help spread this message. You get started. All right, look at Big Juicy. Come on now, Big Juicy. I see your comment. Y'all, just so y'all know, Big Drewski, that's who did my new song, All Things Are Possible. He produced it and plucking that bass and that guitar on there. So y'all make sure y'all follow him and holler at him if you need some music or a track. Very anointed brother, not just doing music, he's anointed, okay? So thank you, Big Drewski, for tuning in. But anyway, we're going to get started. Thank y'all for tuning in to the Self-Love Journey, Conversations with Shei Atkins, where we learn how to have a healthy relationship with ourselves. And I talk to people from all walks of life who come on to, share their journey so we can be inspired and motivated to keep going. So tonight I have husband and wife, Rod and Kesha Garrett. We go way back. I'm talking about years ago. I was in my early 20s. I'll be on the 4th floor this year. The good Lord say the same. Yes, sir. But we're bringing awareness to autism tonight. I've been seeing, different posts of their son who's autistic, and just by looking, I see a handsome fella who can draw. He draws the most beautiful picture. So I have no clue about autism, and I purposely did not Google it because I want to be just as intrigued as y'all on tonight about just their journey and just what autism is. So let's now get into it. Let's talk about autism and what autism is for those watching.
Okay. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, ladies first.
Okay, so autism, it is a spectrum disorder, and the main symptoms mainly deal with social communication and social interaction, and also like repetitive behaviors and restricted behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that people need to understand about autism is it is a spectrum, ASD, autism spectrum disorder. It's a spectrum. So that means that everybody with autism is not the same. So there's a saying in the autism community, if you've met one person with autism, then you've met one person with autism. That one person does not represent everyone that has autism because everybody is on a spectrum. So you can't always just physically tell that someone is autistic. And so that's why there are certain signs to help you know what, whether or not a person is autistic or not. And, I'll let my husband kind of talk about some of the signs and symptoms.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to add, when people think about autism, majority of the time their mind goes to, well, retardation, like mental retardation, or just, but it's far from that. And before I get to the signs and symptoms, I'm going to speak to, like, when we talk about, when we think about autism, the thing that we want to make sure people understand is that it's a when they say a disorder, I don't those are the clinical terms, but basically it is a I call it challenges. An individual has challenges with socialization, with touch. It may be loud sounds.
You're going into the signs anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to the signs anyway. Loud sounds. They don't like to be touched. They have a real sensitive touch and sound.
When you say touch, do you mean like a hug?
Yeah, like a hug. You may see it may be a child or an adult. Again, it varies from individuals who are diagnosed. There may be a person who, when you go try to hug them, they may just draw up, or they may not put their arms around you. They may just be, and that causes a lot of uneasiness for them. You may see someone who may not be very verbal,
or verbal at all. A lot of people, and I say people with autism because I think a lot of times people are stuck on children. Yeah, but children grow up to be adults because there is no cure for autism. So you have functioning adults that have autism, but a lot of people with autism are nonverbal. They don't speak at all. Those that are, they start speaking late in life. They may not speak when, most children might start speaking, they'll babbling before, they turn a year old, and they progressively start speaking and developing their language. So by the time they're 2, they're formulating like short, small sentences or something. But, you may find a child with autism that can't speak at all. Also, a lot of people with autism have heightened anxiety. So like my husband was saying, the heightened senses, like a sense of smell, sense of their hearing. They, like he said, they don't like loud noises, screeching noises that can irritate them. Certain smells will irritate them. The touch will irritate. If they can get overstimulated. So if there's just a lot going on around them, it can cause anxiety. It's like a sensory overload, and it's very uncomfortable for them. So those are some things that a person may notice with somebody with autism.
Right. And again, it's a spectrum. So you have those who are very high level functioning, very intelligent, very detailed, very meticulous and routine, to those who may be nonverbal, talk at all, or they may not be able to communicate how they feel. Or so it varies. And again, for us, and I know we'll get more into it. I know for us, we tried to look at, okay, like why, like what causes that? So we did a deep dive. I know when Miles was first diagnosed, for us, it was trying to immerse ourselves in the information. And for me, I'm a dot and tittle guy. I'm a scientific guy. So I'm like, what is the science behind this? And so went on that journey. And so, there are a few things that are proposed that causes autism. There's really no true like gene or anything that says, hey, this is a genetic code for autism, so to speak. But like, it can be environmental factors. We're talking about pollution. It can be deprivation of oxygen, during childbirth. So it's those type of, so it's there are multiple causes, but to say this was the cause or this was the thing that led to my child being diagnosed, that's there's no way to determine that.
And in recent years, they have ruled out that it's vaccines because for years, it was being said that vaccines were the cause for autism, but recent research has shown that it's not vaccines. And so, like you said, really the cause is unknown. It can be genetic, but there are so many things that are still unknown. That's why they're continuing to try to research because the numbers for autistic people is growing. When Miles was first diagnosed, it was like 1 in 110. Now it's 1 in 54. So 1 in 54 people are diagnosed with autism. And boys are more likely to be diagnosed than girls. Actually, they will develop it more than girls, actually 4 times more likely.
4 times, right.
And people of color are less likely to be diagnosed, or when they are diagnosed, they're diagnosed late because of sometimes lack of resources, not understanding the signs. Because even you've heard more talk of autism in the last, I would say, 10 years. It's still fairly new to a lot of people. A lot of people don't understand it. And once you really start hearing about the signs, the symptoms, what to look for, then things start to make sense.
Because and of course we can definitely speak from our own journey. Well, we can pivot there. So I know for me, and I've heard this really is a common theme for dads, for fathers. Typically, the mother will see there's something there before the husband does. I know for me, I just thought that it was a part of just, him adjusting. And what I mean by that was my son, he's 17 and he's 6'4". He's always been the biggest and tallest kid in his age group. So I thought that for him, it was an adjustment because of his size. And he had a lot of challenges with what they call transitions. If it's something that's out of routine and you had to switch, like say for instance, he was at the child learning center that he was in, they would have certain things they would have to move through during the course of the day. Well, as he got older, he was irritable. Like if it was a timed activity and it was time to stop that activity and he hadn't finished, then that was a hard thing for him. And for me, I'm just thinking, well, he was born in September. He's not quite old enough to move to the next class because of his age. So they kept him in the same class with so the other kids that he was in group with moved on to the next class. But so I'm thinking is that.
But what was he doing, like throwing a tantrum?
Yeah. I remember very vividly, like I would get calls, like I'm headed to work. And I'd either get a call on the way to work or get a call in the afternoon. And I was trying to figure out like what's going on. So it was a situation where and the child care center we had them in, they were actually like family to us because we knew them, and so we definitely trusted them. So it was a situation where they were doing an activity where they were coloring, and he didn't get, and it was time to move to the next activity. He hadn't finished coloring, and he became very irritable. He was very irritable, and it was hard to redirect him. So they used timeout, and so it got to a point where even timeout wasn't working, because if you're in timeout, you still can't finish that coloring. And so it wasn't like, okay, I'm being restricted from something I want to do, and I'm not ready to move there yet. So it eventually got to a point where it became very repetitive. And of course, me being a dad, I just didn't know. And for a while, I was in denial about it. And as a father, I was in denial about it. I was like, you know what, man, he's a big
Feel like
kid.
you needed a good whooping.
Yeah.
That's what I would think. I was like, okay, you cutting up at that daycare, you finna get a whooping.
Right.
I'm gonna interject because I was noticing some things with my son, and I would mention it to my husband, and he would just be like, you know. And I even took him to a pediatrician to just get them to look at him and see, you know, what was going on. Because when we really started noticing things, it was when he was around 4.
Okay.
Right. I think he was around 4, almost 5. And he was 4 because he was still in pre-K. And it was, so we were trying to get him looked at or whatever. The pediatrician said, well, he's developing normally, his size, he's eating, whatever. And so the pediatrician was like, oh, it's nothing to worry about. Yeah. So, but I still knew something was just different about my child. And I would still say something to his dad, and he was like, oh, you know, whatever. And when y'all kind of talked about the whole, like, you know, give him a whooping or something, that was my grandfather's thing. You know, he was always so it was like, no, you just discipline him. Y'all just, you know, I would be like, no, but it's something different, you know. And so it got to the point to where it was like, okay, we got to find somewhere for him to go where they can handle him, because it got to the point where nobody could handle him. And it was also what we were dealing with. His tantrums got so bad. It was one day, my daughter and I were home, and my husband was at work. It was during the summer. And my son had a tantrum so bad to where I didn't know what to do. All I did was close the door on him and let him just have it out. And I was downstairs just crying. My daughter was crying because we didn't know what to do. And
but did you know, like, was it another one of them situations where he didn't want to adjust?
No, I don't even remember what it was. Remember, I don't know if I really don't know what happened. He just started throwing a fit. And I was crying, my daughter was crying. I called my husband. I was like, I'm scared because I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. And he eventually calmed down on his own. But those are the types of things that we were dealing with early on. And because he was a very calm baby. And so that was it just started, we noticed the difference of, you know, like around preschool, because he was very calm. And he was walking early. He started walking before he was a year old. He was using words and talking. So it wasn't like it was something that we saw gradually happening. It was just kind of like, okay, what's going on? So when we moved him, we had to move him to a different school. And the principal of that school, we were telling him what was going on, and she asked us to research Asperger's syndrome, which is another part of autism. It's another autistic disorder, like on the spectrum, and it's called Asperger's syndrome.
Right. So, you know, and to speak to what she was saying about the transition, and I hope she don't mind us saying her name, Miss Bonton. So at that time, Miss Bonton was the principal of the charter school. And upon the first meeting, and actually, you know, on that day, I was the one who had to go to the school and at the child care center. And you know, to hear those words like, well, Mr. Garrett, I don't know what else we could do.
Wow.
You know, and you know, it was like, for me as a dad, you know, it was hard because I'm thinking, but he's just a kid. Like, what y'all talking about? So that day, I ended up having to leave work, and I just came on home. But it was something amazing, and I was upset because I just didn't understand what was going on. But also too, I didn't hold it against the child care center, because again, those individuals, they were like family to us.
And they did an excellent job with our children, because our daughter went to the same child care center. But, you know, at that time, if you weren't trained in dealing with a child with autism, and again, at that time, people weren't, you know, we didn't even know anything about it.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we don't know what to do. We were really at a loss, and we weren't ready to, you know, make that transition. So it's like, okay, now we got to try to find somewhere for him to go. You know, unfortunately, I was one of my coworkers. I was telling her about how we needed to find a place for Miles to go, and she suggested, and we can say the Road School.
Road School,
and it had just started. It was a very new school.
Yeah.
But I can say him going there really, that's what helped us to really on the road to finding out what was going on with our son, because I have to point out, he was diagnosed late. He wasn't actually diagnosed until he was in the second grade.
Wow.
So for 4 years, pretty much, we were just trying to figure out what was going on with him. And I want to share at this point how it is very important, not just for parents that have children with autism, but any parent. I don't care if they don't have any kind of challenge. It's important that you advocate for your children. Because if you don't advocate for your children, then they can fall through the cracks. Nobody's going to look out for your children like you will.
Yeah.
And being an educator myself, I noticed that sometimes a lot of parents just take what the school says.
Yeah.
And just accept it. But when you know your child, and when you know, when you research for yourself and you look into what's available, then you can speak on your child's behalf, because you don't have to accept what anybody says. Now at the Road School, they were very helpful. So I don't want that to be, but I know in the future, as he dealt with other situations, we had to really advocate. And, you know, one of his teachers was really instrumental in helping us to get him tested, because, you know, we just kept saying, you know, we just need help. We don't know what to do. Because it was at a point where every day when I would pick him up from school, it was something different.
Wow.
And I was crying every day when I picked him up from school. Every day it was like, well, Miles did this, Miles did that. We wrote a report. He did. And every day I was like, God, why me? But then I think how at church one time we had a dance conference, and there was a special guest. She was a dancer instructor, and she was also a prophet. And she prophesied to me, because my son had the nickname Nemo, because he was obsessed with the color orange. And he always carried a Nemo in his hand, which is also like another sign. You know, they like repetition. They like things to be the same. They got to have routine. So he always had this Nemo toy in his hand, and or an orange crayon, anything orange.
Wow.
He was attracted to. And even now, he likes the color orange. He likes lime green and orange. Those are his favorite colors.
Wow.
So I remember she prophesied, and she said, Nemo is going to cause you many tears. And it didn't hit me until we were going through that situation, and I literally would cry almost every day.
Wow, Lord.
Because they were always telling me, Miles did this, Miles did that, and I would just be like, I don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. And you know, so that teacher helped advocate, and she would talk to us and say, hey, y'all need to push for this. This is, you know, you need to request this. And so we started just requesting that he get tested, and through that we were able to get him so much help.
Wow.
He was able to get speech therapy because something else Miles had dealt with when he was a baby. He had ear infections all the time, and he actually had to get tubes in his ears because it was really affecting his hearing. And so speech therapy, because he had a hard time expressing himself, and certain words he would kind of mess up a little bit. You know, it was just a lot of different things. Behavior specialist, we got him in therapy, and even to this day he sees a therapist. Because another sign that autistic people another thing they deal with is anxiety. They have real high anxiety because if you think about change and transition is hard for them.
Yeah.
So what we would have to do once we found out everything and we started researching, a lot of praying, we started to say, okay, this is what we have to do. And so we had to just come together as a family.
Yeah.
And really talk to each other about, okay, what can we do? And how can we help? And it was a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
We made some mistakes.
I can imagine.
And those things that worked, they worked. Those things that didn't, they didn't.
Yeah.
But we did a whole lot of research and had help from the schools. And once we got the method down, start noticing improvements over the years.
Right.
And another key thing, and I hope I'm not jumping, but as stuff kind of comes to me, I just want to put it out there.
Yeah.
Another thing by us, first of all, we did not accept defeat.
Right.
And we didn't want people to feel sorry for us or sorry for Miles. And we didn't want him to be treated like he was just damaged, and he was beyond help. And so we still treated him like any other child. We still had high expectations from him. We still taught him, these are your chores. These are, so we taught him to be mannerable. And he's very honest. and when we talk about social cues and social signs, that's one of the things. A lot of times they don't react to things like we do. So things that we may think are funny, he wouldn't think is funny.
Right.
When we cry, he doesn't cry because he's just not emotional like that. So it was certain things that we had to so for Christmas, and one of the things we had to really start educating our family. So the more we learned, we had to educate them because it was so much they didn't understand. And I appreciate our families, both sides, because they wanted to know and they would ask us, okay, teach us about this. How do we deal with this? How can we help you? And that made a huge difference. And so my grandfather, who was so old school, he was educated. He was like one of our biggest supporters, and so those things really, really helped. Just just being educated and knowing. But with Miles, if you got him, and we had to tell people, if you give him a gift for Christmas or his birthday, give him what he asked for. Because if you gave him anything he didn't ask for, he would be like, I didn't want that. And he would walk off. And at first people, was like,
very disrespectful,
taken aback. But he wasn't trying to be disrespectful. It's just like it didn't register to him. Why would you give me this if this is not what I want?
Right.
Yeah.
So
I've earmarked points in time where I call them, like, for the lack of better terms, like some people call it a aha moment, but I call it a God ordained moment.
Okay.
So let me explain. There are 4 things that I remember very vividly that really gave me fresh perspective and helped me to understand as a father, like this, you have to, like she said, advocate. So for me, what we both did actually is, well, let me get to the first time that it just really, I had to come out of denial.
Okay.
So he was really big on Chuck E. Cheese. Chuck E. Cheese was his thing, right? So what I made a point of doing is spending some time with him, and I would just take him to Chuck E. Cheese. Now, occasionally I would take him outside of, if it was a birthday party for someone a kid that we knew, family member. This particular time we went, And this is before he got tested.
Mm.
And we went, and here I am. Of course, he's a big kid, and so we're sitting there eating pizza. So I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna go play with the other kids, but instead of playing with the other kids, he waited for Chucky to come out. Chucky came out. Chucky, you know, and they don't hug; they give kids high five.
Yeah.
So, but he was reaching to give Chucky a hug, and I was like, man, he want to hug him, but
Yeah.
the guy gave him a high five. Now I'm thinking he's going to play with the other kids. He is really big on animatronics, huge animatronics fan. So instead of him playing with the kids, he went over to the Chuck E. Cheese and the animatronics band, and he was there. He was just watching them. In my mind, I really had a moment where I was grieving. Like, really, it was an epiphany for me. It was like I had to really understand. Like, look, my son. You know, I come from a family of athletes. Like we played some type of sport.
Yeah.
And we were always big people, big guys.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it, and so I had a moment. I really was. At that moment, I grieved because I had to understand, like, I really do need to invest in and change my expectation of what I thought my son or hopes my son would be, and to be a father, to understand he's unique. He's not, they would say disorders. I use terms like challenge or has special needs. So I had to really dig deep. And so it was at that point, and I think I came home, I shared with her a few days later, like, you know what, I was in denial all this time. So what I did, and I think that was a God ordained moment because it was just he and I. So what I did from that point, the both of us, I aligned with her, and I immersed myself in learning, like, what is this? Like, what is it? And like I said, I'm like, I got to know how it worked. And so that was one moment. The other moment the first one was we met Miss Bunton. Let me take a step back. The first one was Miss Bunton. We met Miss Bunton. Miss Bunton, it was God ordained because, again, he couldn't go back to the child care center.
Yeah.
Upon first meeting Miss Bunton, she hugged him. She said, Then she got on eye level with him, and she tried to hug him again. I'm thinking, that's kind of different. Like, what you doing?
Yeah.
But then that's when she said, that's when she mentioned Asperger's. And I'm like, what? And of course, I'm in denial this time. I'm like, man, I don't know what this is. I'm like, okay, this is the first time she done met my son. She don't know him from Adam. So, but she saw it, and she had obviously been around kids and knew that there was something there. So that was when we went to Chuck E. Cheese, and so it was a God ordained moment when we met with his teacher. And we had parent teacher meetings, and we were looking at test scores, because what she told us is that there were subtle cues that she would do for him. Like, say, for instance, if it was time to start, she said, like, he would just be like looking at his pencil, doing this, and the test time is like it's sort of like a speed math, math test, and like so when she would go by and pick up and tell him to pass the paper forward, he's like, ooh, and he started writing. She's like, it's time's up.
Yeah.
He would get upset.
Wow.
So then what she says, what she would do is she would do subtle cues. And I don't know if she was supposed to or not, but she did. So she would walk by him, and when it was time to start, she would touch his hand. She would touch his hand. Like, he had the pencil, she would touch his hand, and, it's time to start. Yeah. So after all of that, and he was having issue with his grades, God moment was when she said, you may want to consider other options. Right? And well, my wife being at that time had SPED training or special education certification. Me being a social worker up to that point, we educated. I'm a social worker. We're trying to figure this thing out. Where are we seeing? And then it clicked to me. I was well versed in Texas Education Agency regulations and policies on our meetings or assessment, review, dismissal, testing, the protocols. I'm like, wait a minute. We need to get him. We need to get him tested. We need to request an R. And so that really was the advocacy that we're talking about. See, when and I think this is across the board with anyone that has a child, parenting a child, who are trying to navigate themselves through either the school system or diagnoses or any needs your child may need. When you become an advocate for this, is just according to our experience, is that you have to immerse yourself in the information. You have to ask yourself the questions like why and what is this, and you have to seek that information yourself. Oftentimes, what we fail is that we try to leave it up to the experts,
right?
But each child is different. Your child is different than my child, and their needs may be altogether different. So we would never, although times for me I did think about getting fly, with the teacher, like, come on, man, like he is a kid, but I had to understand they're doing their jobs the best that they know how. They may not know, but there are things in place that we already knew about that we had not exercised ourselves. And so with that, requesting the R, and that got the ball rolling. And so when they did the test and the series of testing by a LSSP, and what does LSSP stand for?
It's a I know it. You put me on the spot.
I'm sorry,
and I can't think, but it's a licensed school psychologist. I'm missing the other S. But I've worked in special ed, but it is an LSSP that works with the school districts, and for school testing they'll do that. Now, one thing I want to say, Miles, we got an official. Let me just say, he wasn't right then. He wasn't diagnosed by a doctor. He was tested and qualified and was identified as a child with autism spectrum disorder. So later on, we talked to doctors and got the confirmation, but that was through the school. And so that helped, though, to get us going, because we weren't getting anything at first. And so it started to make sense. So, but again, that just what he was saying. It's important when I say being an advocate for your child. A lot of times people look down on the special education program. And I will say that unless you know how to navigate it, then it may not necessarily be good, because it's not for everybody. Some parents just take it as, okay, that's what they need. Sometimes there needs to be other interventions before that may be the case, but some children actually need it. And one thing that we had to explain to Miles, because he didn't like the idea of it, because he didn't like the stigma that came with it. Because of course, if you say somebody's in special education, no, they're automatically thinking, people think I'm stupid, And we had to explain to him, because something else that a lot of people may not necessarily know is that when you are qualified for special education services, it's based on, are you learning disabled? Do you have a behavior? Because some children are in special ed just because they have a behavior disability or behavior challenges. Some, it's a learning disability. For Miles, it was just autism, and that was really it. He didn't have a learning disability. And it's obvious now, because he's far exceeded everybody's expectations as far as his grades and his academics is concerned. Far away. where when he was younger, it was a challenge to keep him focused and do homework. Homework was like, oh my gosh, that was one of those help me Jesus come down from gonna take me away. Something that normally should take 30 minutes for us, it was 2 hours, 3 hours. Sometimes I would have to write a note on the paper and say, this is how far we can get, just grade this part. It got to the point by the time Miles reached 7th and 8th grade, he would knock that stuff out. He was, he was doing things on his own. It completely changed. So, I'm trying to fast forward a little bit. I want to give good information, but I also want to kind of share, with Miles' journey and our journey. I want to put in there also, if you have a child, young adult, teenager, whoever with autism, and they have siblings, you have to also pay attention to their siblings. Because one thing that happened that we found out too, because we were paying so much attention to Miles, that our daughter Mia started to feel neglected. And when we found that out, it was like, oh my gosh, we were so busy trying to make sure he was straight and he was taken care of, because Mia was, she always did well in school. She was super talented. She was involved in choir and things like that. So we just felt like she's okay. We gotta focus on him. But come to find out, she was going through some things. She started getting bullied. And she was dealing with her own emotional stuff. And sitting down talking to her, and she finally expressed, well, I feel like y'all put all your focus on Miles. And I was kind of here. And so we had to find that balance. As parents, it's like, okay, we got to take care of both of our kids. We can't neglect one, thinking she's okay because we're giving all our attention to another. And so, that was just another tidbit that I want to put in there for anybody dealing with, who has more than one child. You can't just do that. You can't just focus on the one and forget the other because you're thinking they're okay. And she really was not. And so, but once we included her in and we started, I would just make it a point where we're having our mother-daughter time. He would take her on daddy-daughter dates. Their thing was seeing sci-fi movies and different things like that. And we would go just get our nails done together or go to the mall together. And so we started making her feel a part. And at the same time, we were teaching and educating her. So she became another one of her brother's protectors. And so she would, come back and tell us if she felt like somebody was talking crazy to her brother or mistreating her brother. She was like, you got to deal with me. And she would kind of tell us, I didn't like the way this person talked to him and, da 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 da. So, that was just another thing that I kind of wanted to add because that was a part of our journey. But I will say that early intervention, earlier that your child is identified and diagnosed, you get right on it and you start finding ways to help your child. Because like I said, he had speech therapy, he had and because also one thing that people don't understand is children with autism tend to have higher physical ailments too. A lot of them deal with gastrointestinal issues and just different things. So you got anxiety, you got this, you got that. And so, again, they're all different. They're all on a spectrum. Some are just extremely talented in some areas. And they may, have issues with others. Miles was more social, and he had anxiety. And I think his anxiety is what led to his lack of focus when it came to his academics. And I think once we started coming up, and there are options for medicine as well, because a lot of children with autism also have ADHD. Early on, because he was having a hard time focusing, one of his doctors was like, well, have y'all considered medicine for him? We were like, no.
Yeah.
We want to try some other things first
Yeah.
before we automatically medicate him. And to this day, he's never been medicated for his anxiety or for ADHD or anything. We worked with the teachers, and one other thing, and again, I guess this is that educator in me. Yeah. Every school year, we go to open house. I would always either do a letter or an email to every one of his teachers. And I would be like, I don't know if you're aware, but my son Miles deals with this. Here are some things that will help you to deal with him. Because one time we had an issue with one teacher and she was disciplining him. And actually, she made a mistake. She thought he had done something and he didn't. And she called and she's like, he's so disrespectful and he kicked the wall and he did this. And so I'm like, oh, what did he do? But I found out she called him to the front of the class and made him stand in front of the class and face the wall. Well, I told her, I said, are you aware of what Miles deals with? I said, that's the worst thing you could ever do, because it's not like attention being called to him. So even now, for like birthdays, we would go to a restaurant. The first thing he would say, do not tell them it's my birthday. Tell them don't come over here singing. I don't want, you know, he's not a big picture taker. So so when I get it, I'm excited. But he does not like attention being drawn to him. So he will say, don't, you know, he'll be like, don't say anything. Don't make a big deal about this. Don't, you know, because he's just, he doesn't like that attention. So it, you know, when she said that that's what she did, I was like, okay, let me educate you. I would be very patient. You know, I would try sometimes that mama bear would rise up. I'm like, okay, I gotta be patient because she doesn't know. Or he doesn't know. And so but it went from Miles having me cry every day because it was always something, to now I get emails from teachers and school officials telling me how it's a pleasure to have him. They wish they can multiply him in their class. He's such a delight. He's such, you know, an humble young man. And he really, really is. You know, looking back when he threw tantrums, he does not. But we still, you know, there's still areas that we have to help him in, because in his mind, a lot of things are black and white. There's no gray. And so you have to be careful when you're talking to somebody with autism, because they take things literally. So when he was little, I remember one time I was saying, are you nervous? He was like, yeah. I said, you have butterflies in your stomach? And he was like, how do you get butterflies in there? And I was like, okay, I can't be sarcastic. I can't use certain terms, because he was like, what do you mean? How does it get there? You know, I don't get that. And so, you know, things we had to learn how to not use sarcasm to actually mean what you say. Also, because of transition and change, we learned to prepare him ahead of time. Something as simple as going home from school. I would pick him up from school. If I was going to stop at the store instead of going straight home, I had to warn him ahead of time, because he would be like, why are you turning that way? The way to get home is this way. And I'm like, no, we're going to the store. Well, how long are we going to be there? Well, Miles, I have to pick up about 10 items. We get in the store, I pick up 10. If I go towards 11, you said 10 items.
Wow.
Why are we still at the store? I'm like, okay, give me 2 or 3 more items.
Wow.
You know, those are types of things, because that's how his brain thinks. And once you realize and understand how they think, and he's very, you know, artsy and very detailed. And one thing we noticed from when he was younger, he was very detailed, even though he was drawn on our walls. You know, we would have SpongeBob and Patrick and Nemo, Dory on our walls, but he pays such attention to detail. And I realized that's how he is now. And when you think he's not listening, he's listening. he's listening. So you just gotta watch and really pay attention, because his brain is very, very sharp. But because of his anxiety, because of certain things that he just didn't understand, he's misunderstood a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why he doesn't always express himself, because he feels like people misunderstand him.
Wow.
So
yeah, and picking up on something that she said, like the one thing that we want, anyone who's watching or go back and watch this replay, and it's a spectrum.
Yes,
because there are children and adults who may not function or have the amount of progress. Let me put it like that. That Miles has, because it's a spectrum. Some will have those challenges even into adulthood. The one thing that I want everybody to really understand about children or parents who have children who have autism is, first of all, I would say just to make sure that you're compassionate, and that you try to get an understanding. I know for me, once I knew that he was transitioning from elementary school to middle school to high school, and even at church, where he was in Sunday school, and there was some situations that happened where his behavior came off. They thought he was being disrespectful, but he just didn't understand sarcasm. So what I did is I developed some tools and some research. I did some research and tools that will help those the layperson who doesn't know anything about autism get a understanding or picture of what that is like for a child. So and what I'll do tonight, after we end, if it's okay with you, I'll drop those lists of resources in the
go ahead,
so that people will see that. So for example, there are some great resources from Autism Speaks. Due to COVID and these past couple of years, we haven't been as active with the walk with Autism Speaks walk, because we would have a walk team. We would have T-shirts made, and we would get people to donate toward that fundraising for research for autism. Videos. There's one. My name is David. Yeah, it's a beautiful claymation. About a kid who he presents to his class on who he is, and these are the things that makes him unique. And then
it's a good, simple educator on symptoms of autism, how you can. And again, we can't say enough though. Every child is different. Every child, because when we've participated in the walks over the years, the Autism Speaks walk that's held in Houston, you see autistic children in wheelchairs. You see some that, maybe have visual impairments. Some that just look like everybody else. You don't know the difference. Because a lot of people, when they see Miles, they was like, I didn't know. I had no idea. I just thought he was super quiet. So again, everybody is different. No two people with autism are the same. They may have some similar, characteristics, but they're not the same, because there are certain things that Miles has never had to deal with being autistic that others have. Because you might have someone that's really high functioning. You might have someone that's moderate, to a low functioning. It's just, they're all very different. And that's why we can't say enough how important it is to research, on your own. And, when he shares these resources, it will be really helpful. One thing that I do want to say as well, a child can be diagnosed as early as 2 years old. But most people are not diagnosed until like 4 or older, because you can see the signs and symptoms. There are other signs, because I wanted to point it out. We been skipping around.
Yeah.
But I want to harp on the routine and also egocentrism, because a lot of people with autism, they are only interested in what interests them. So if you're having a conversation with someone with autism, they can be looking at you and clearly hear what you say. But most of the time, if it's not something they're interested in, they will start talking about something totally different. And you'll be like, where did that come from? But it's like, that doesn't interest me. And that was one thing we discovered with Miles when in earlier years he was struggling with reading. We found out it wasn't that he couldn't read. Yeah. He just wasn't interested in what they were presenting him to read. Wow. So once I found out that he liked, it was a little critter.
Little critter.
He likes little critter books.
Read all the books.
So I started buying nothing but little critter books. Yeah. And he would read them from front to back. Wow. Then as he got older, he liked Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Oh, yeah. So I bought that whole series. Yeah. From front to back over and over again. So we discovered it's nothing wrong with him. Yeah. He didn't like it. And so that's how they are. If it doesn't interest them, then they're going to focus. And if they find something that they like, they are almost obsessed. Wow. And they will research and know everything possible about the topic. So if Miles was interested in spiders at some time, he could tell you all the species. He could tell you, certain facts. And he still does that to this day. There are certain things that if he's a Sonic the Hedgehog fan. Yeah. And he likes retro. So you would think he was born in the 80s. Because he likes everything 80s. Yeah. Everybody in our household, we listen to a certain type of music. Miles listens to techno. Wow. That's what he's into. Yeah. He's into, he loves the 80s, so he likes old school video games. Yeah. He's a gamer. He's into technology. He likes animation. He's into graphic design. Those are things that interest him. And
that's why he like Chuck E. Cheese and them up there in the front, huh?
Right. Yeah. Right. And for years, if all you had to do was take him to Chuck E. Cheese so he could just see him. Yeah. And at the time, he started researching animatronics. Wow. And then he discovered showbiz.
He can literally tell you the history of how Chuck E. Cheese, how showbiz. And some of the aspects of Chuck E. Cheese were kind of taken from that content. Yeah, the whole research.
Yeah, he did all the research.
And so let me jump in here. So again, when she mentioned like the early age of detection, that is key. And I know for a lot of families, and again, we were educated, double degree, social worker, teacher. Yeah, and it was hard to navigate it at first because I contacted a psychologist. I was ready to go head on in and gave the insurance information, and he told me this one well-known group. He told me he didn't take out insurance, and just to do an initial assessment was $1,500. And I was like, man, hold up. So what happened was, so what happened, I mean, we're insured. So what happened was I had to research a little deeper. Now, he had already passed the threshold in terms of age for ECI, early childhood intervention. Those services are free from 0 to age 3, 0 to age 3. They're free services. And a person could get connected with those services and get those assessments and those things for the child. It was set up to do that. Your pediatrician. Now, if you're insured, of course, people have different income, different levels, walks of life. Yeah. Your pediatrician, having those conversations with, as time has passed, the education and the awareness have grown.
Yeah.
So pediatricians can look and ask those questions about the signs and symptoms, right? Although they may not be able to diagnose, they can maybe talk about ECI services or some type of services that they can provide so that your child can get what they need.
Yeah.
And there's a school. Now I'm talking about these are nominal costs or free. School age, again, your R's. You can request, and it by law, the school is responsible for doing the R testing. And it can be that they do this assessment, and they can the questionnaire or the tool that they use can indicate that there may be on the spectrum, right? As it did with us. And lastly, and these are resources that we use.
Yeah.
Now this research, and remember I was talking earlier about that God ordained moment.
Yeah.
The fourth one is I was at work, and this lady and her daughter came to this program and did a program I was working with and did a presentation. Her name is Angelina. I call her to this day. She's an angel.
Yeah.
Because she presented then about, now again, traditionally in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't see anybody, and this is, I'm being totally transparent. I don't see anybody that looks like us who are dealing with the issue like we're dealing with.
Yeah.
That can help us and understand and help us navigate this system. Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
So it was Angelina, and she is now she is employed with the agency. Oh, it's called NAMI.
NAMI.
NAMI, and this stands for National Association for Mental Illness. Okay, and again, I'm gonna type these resources. Later. So NAMI was pivotal because at the time I talked to Angelina and shared a little bit of my story with her. She said, "Listen, we hold a support group. We have a family to family support group, and it was literally probably 2 miles from our house.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we went, and I knew then. I said, "This is godsend because it incorporated the whole family. Because the whole group is a support group, and to support and help navigate individuals like us who just don't know the answers. Help us. They walk the path, they navigated the path, and they're showing others, and it's free at no cost. These support groups are at no cost. It's either you're a family member of someone who has a mental illness or disorder, or you are yourself to get that type of support. And it was at the group that we went to that we brought Mia. Mia went some of the sessions, and it was almost like, for me, it was the answer. It culminated with, okay, the lady prophesying to us years ago about Nemo. He couldn't stay at the childcare center. But then having to talk to advocate for the R. But it's nothing like getting support from people who can understand your struggle, understand the challenge that you walk through, and to hold your hand through it. It was almost as though I had new oxygen because her husband was there as well to share his story, and I was like, you know what? The process or the mindset and perspective he had as a father was exactly the same way I felt. So to do that, and so we both want everybody to know that this journey is a journey. The one thing that I can say, and I couldn't have said this 10 years ago. But one thing I can say is, for me, it really, and this may sound odd, but it helped me to be a better father, in the sense that I had to understand that I couldn't go to work and make money and fix this problem.
Yeah.
I can't fix it. I couldn't fix it.
Yeah.
So what I had to do is I had to lean into her.
Yeah.
To then align and say, yeah, this is something that's touching us, and it's touching us now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And when she called me on the day when he was having a tantrum, I was like, what's going on? Am I gonna have to leave work? Because if I leave work and get to the house, I'm not gonna have no words. Right. So you know what I'm saying? But I understand that I couldn't fix it.
Yeah.
So and I don't want this to sound cliche, but with much prayer, and God answered those prayers by those moments in time to bring us to this point. And so I know our story is much different than others in some aspects because, you know, Miles has excelled. Some people are still figuring out. Some people are still having the struggles because their child or their family or their loved one is on that moderate to really severe level or low level. I wouldn't say severe, on the lower end of the spectrum. And so I think if anything that we could say to anybody that will be a broad stroke for parents who are going through this journey is to have compassion. And to understand. I think it's up to us to heighten the awareness. And it's up to people who don't know what this special, unique thing that makes your child or makes your family member different and unique than other people. Then they'll be accepting of that. Because, you know, there were times where I will always question like, you know, how's it going? Why not? And I do this to this day as a father, right? And we do it as parents. Like, I can understand and relate to parents who are walking this journey much differently than we are, having struggles to understand, struggles through the school system, finding resources. You have that piece of it, which I call sort of kind of navigating your way to the supports. But also you have to think that your child is going to grow up. They have to transition into adulthood. What is that phase of life going to look like for them? And how can you equip them for those next stages in life? There are some who go into adulthood. They're very successful. They go off to school. They transition very well. Some it takes longer, and it takes a little bit different way of parenting and guiding and modeling, right?
And different resources,
and
you know,
right.
And that's what's important because you know Miles has progressed and done a lot, but it still comes with new challenges. And so now that he'll be 18 this year. You know, he's entering his senior year in high school. So now it's like, okay, now we're transitioning into adulthood. How is that going to work for him? What resources are available for him? And also challenges like, I will share this. We had been trying to get him to learn how to drive, want to teach him. And he would just be like, I really don't want to. I don't want to. We got down to the bottom of it. And the thing was, he was anxious about learning how to drive because of all of the recent killings of young Black men. And he said, I don't want to drive because I don't want to get pulled over by the police. And that's another challenge. And so, you know, there's still those things, you know, that we have to deal with that, you know, even though he's come so far, you still have to explain things. You still have to things. You still have to, what about the next thing? And as his mother, that's been one of my things. Like, okay, how, you know, I know he's going to be successful. I mean, and I know God has his hand on him. I know that. But, you know, still that mother in you. It's like, okay, this is my child and I want him to be okay. I want him to be secure. So it's, you know, with other people around him, like his cousin is driving, and it's no big deal for him. And his cousin is a year younger than him.
Yeah.
But he's, because of the way he thinks, and he's looking at, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And that's also where, you know, the therapy comes in.
Yeah.
Because she can talk, his therapist, you know, she can talk him through those things and ask him, okay, what are you anxious about? Well, let's try this exercise, and let's think about this, and let's try to do this. And it also is helpful for us bringing him up in church, because he's very serious about his relationship with God as well.
Come on.
So he will go into the prayer closet and pray.
Come on now.
And he will ask. And he recently went through, especially when the pandemic, he was asking some very serious questions like, how do I know that I'm really saved? How do I know that I really have a relationship with God? So, you know, and our approach to explaining it to him, even in that, has to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
You know, we have to find ways to get him to really understand, because we also have to tell him, you know, you can't take everything at face value, because there's a lot of people putting information out there on YouTube and on the internet that will sound good, but it doesn't mean they're really the one you need to be getting the message from. So, you know, when I say, you know, we transition, he's done well, but we still have new challenges that are faced even as he gets older. And I like that we're having this conversation, because what I notice is that when people talk about autism, they focus on young children. They hardly ever talk about when they get older and transition into adults. And so, you know, I personally would like to see more awareness brought to the teen years, and because when they start going through puberty, that's a whole nother thing. You know, helping them to understand those things. When, you know, what are you going to do in your career? And I'm loving the awareness today, because, and you know, I don't want us to just take up the whole night. But I'm loving that there is more awareness now. There are companies out there now that are purposely hiring people with autism because of how they think. And sometimes they can block out certain things, because it's like, if they're laser focused on it, they're laser focused. They will do their research. They, you know, when he's doing his digital art, when he's focused on it, nothing else around him matters until he gets it done. And that's, you know, that's really, you know, how he is. But, you know,
let me share this real quick, and then Shei, we'll pass it back to you.
Okay. We can talk all night. We don't want to do that.
So even with the details, again, this is a minor God ordained moment. God ordains all things, right? So he had a science project. Now, I'm thinking, it's just a project, bro. Like, you're not gonna get a grade for it. So I let him choose what it is that you want to do, and I'm going to help you. You know, I will be the architect, right? So he chooses a bionic hand, a mechanical hand that you make out of cardboard and string. And so we up. You know, I got all the materials, and we make it, right. So he puts it on, but when he pulls the rings that attach to the fingers of the cardboard, the hand is not closing. So he's looking at it. Now, mind you, it's about 9 o'clock. I'm tired. You know, we came straight in 8. We went to the business, right? So he looks at it, and I'm thinking, well, I'm saying to myself, like, listen, son, that's just gonna have to work. But he saw it, he kept looking, and he said, I know what's wrong with it. He was like, this piece is too far up. It has to come down. I was like, oh, this dude, bro. So listen, we had to start, well, not all of them, we had to do the cardboard piece all over again, which is the biggest part of the project. So we did it. We finished about 11 o'clock, took all the pictures. So we go to school. I'm thinking it's a science fair. I'm thinking the science fair is like, okay, it's by grades. They got all the displays. It was really nice. And I'm thinking, okay, he's not getting a grade for it. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
So they have an intermission at a science fair. I'm like, they doing too much.
Yeah.
So anyway, we come off the intermission, and now they say now we're gonna announce the third, second, and first place winners for grades so and so and so. And at this time, I think it's fifth grade.
No, he was eighth grade by this time.
Eighth grade. He's eighth grade. So we standing on the wall because I'm thinking, okay, we gonna leave right after this because there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we sit on the wall and they call eighth grade, they call the third place, they call the second place, and they say, now the first place winner for the eighth grade science fair at Rose School is Miles Garrett. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And this is what he says to me. We dapped each other. He said, "Oh, I knew I was gonna win." I said, all right now.
Because he set the goal. He said he wanted to make an A on the project.
He wanted to make an A on the project.
Wow.
And he was so focused on getting it because the whole purpose was to be able to get the hand to where it can pick up objects.
Something. Right.
Yeah.
And so just out of cardboard, he was able to create a hand that actually could pick up objects.
Wow.
And so it was just really interesting.
Right.
So, you have to really pay attention to them. They know so much and you can learn so much from them. I saw a quote. I'll share this and I'm done. And if anybody has questions, but there was a quote and it said, people with autism are superheroes.
Right.
And that is so true. They have superpowers that people they can't even imagine. And when you're talking to a parent of a child with autism, whether they're little or an adult, don't feel sorry for them. Early on, when we would tell people, well, Miles is autistic, people would automatically be like, oh,
yeah.
And it was like, no, don't feel sorry for us because God placed him in our lives for a reason. We were gifted as his parents for a reason. And I can't even imagine him being any different than who he is.
Right.
And I have even told him, I love your uniqueness. Mm-hmm. He's a self-proclaimed geek. He says it. I'm a geek and I like it. And he doesn't care what anybody thinks about it.
Right.
And I'm cool with that. And I just say, don't feel sorry for us.
Right.
We were just blessed to have a gifted child and growing into a gifted young man. And we love him. We wouldn't change him.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing. I love that. I thank y'all so much for sharing. And for those watching who just tuning in, Rod, he's gonna put some resources for people who have a child with autism to help them.
Absolutely.
In the comments, he's gonna, after the show is over, stay tuned to the comments. Come back and check it out. He's gonna put some resources for y'all to help y'all.
We appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I thank y'all for saying yes, and God bless y'all on y'all journey. And everybody else that's watching, y'all be encouraged and don't give up. Love on y'all, baby. And I'll talk to y'all later.
All right.
Thank you
Have
so
a
much,
good night. Thank you.
All right, now. Love y'all.
Love you too.
Mm-hmm.